everybody, it's Romania Black. Everything's fine and dandy. We're just on the penultimate episode set for Psychopaths Extended Edition. Yeah, we're just on the penultimate episode. Yeah, that's all right. We just got this week and next week, and then we'll be into season 2, so there's that. Oh my gosh, in last episode, oh, my shipper heart just breaking. Because Akane, Kogami, he had to go off and do his own thing, leaving Akane the note. He's got to go try to find Makishima his own way. So it's like everything's split up. Now Kogami is acting as a rogue agent. He's out to find Makishima and get him on his own. Akane is still trying to act within the system, and her and the other enforcers are trying to get Makishima cornered, and meanwhile they don't know for sure that Kagari is dead, and meanwhile the Sybil system is going amok and trying to recruit Shogo into their own book club. So it's just 9 kinds of wonderful. I do have a couple comments I want to do before we start out this reaction. Sunspots had an amazing comment on episode 8. If you're on Patreon, go check out my post for episode 8. And Kagari had Sunspots had a very awesome post about Kagari and his character. And I agree. I was sitting there nodding my head, reading, going yes to most of that, being like, yeah, for most of it. So if you get a chance, go read that. But that was really, really good. And then Anime Annie talking about back in episode 7. I'm talking about how Ginoza and Masaoka, there's like a little jet stream that goes by. It's like the typical anime airplane stream, but it actually divides Ginoza and Masaoka. And I thought that was really cool to divide them, and Anime Annie pointed that out. And then way back in episode 1, Ginoza said that Akane, this gave me a little bit of hope, that Akane, you know, if she was doing her job as an inspector well, she would be able to control the enforcers from a distance and use them to her advantage. That was the whole point. Ginoza's not very good at following his own advice, because he not only did not do what he told her to do, but he hasn't really done that since. But he told her that was kind of the objective. And so I thought about that, and I was like, yeah, Akane can't really get around the helmets because the helmets will respond to her. So maybe it'll work out where she can kind of communicate with Kogami from a distance, and they can help each other. I don't know, anything to keep him from dying. I am terrified Kogami is going to die in this season. I am terrified of that because I really like Kogami's character. I don't want him to die, but last episode made me really worried about that. So, So there we are. So yes, that's what I'm afraid of, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Also, I liked the idea of Akane, the difference between her and Makishima. There's a lot of similarities with their characters, a lot, but there are also a lot of differences. And I like that Anime Annie pointed out that Akane accepting and going with the flow and just treating the system like it is what it is kind of totally in opposition of Makishima, who's like, no, I want you to change the system. And it's like, okay, sir. Sure thing, Jan. All right. And that's kind of where he is at with that. So I thought that was really interesting. And apparently the therapist who Ginoza was going to, they are played by the same voice actor as Wakamatsu from Kuroko's Basketball, which is interesting. And also Kanami from Ace of the Diamond, Sakasa from Haikyuu, and Herder from Moriarty the Patriot. And I was like, this voice actor plays all those characters there. No way alike. What? So I thought that was really interesting. Not typecast, that's for sure. Now, Shogo's voice actor, a wee bit typecast. A wee bit typecast. Just a little. It's either they're a villain or they're posh. There's like, they're posh, trolling, or a villain, or all three. And you can figure out which anime he's in. It's great, right? But yeah, y'all, I don't know what to do. We're on the penultimate episode set, and I really feel for Kagari not being there. His lack of presence is, you can feel it. I'm terrified at the prospect of Kogami dying. I'm terrified at the prospect of any of the others dying, if I'm being honest. Kunizuka, is she safe? Don't know. Shion, at least she's back in the lab, but who knows if she's safe. Masaoka, he ain't safe. Kogami, he ain't safe. Ginoza, I feel like Ginoza would live, though, because Ginoza is, I feel like my really like unnerving feeling with Masaoka and Kogami are that they're very similar characters, and they've had similar roles with Akane and Ginoza, and I'm like, would the story kill them off? Why, yes, it would. So I'm very nervous about that, so I don't know how to feel. That's where I'm at. But we'll cross that bridge when it comes to it. it may be fine. Maybe just perfectly fine. You never know, right? So, but we'll just have to wait and see. So I'm not going to waste any more time. I've talked for 5 minutes. We're going to start episode 10, technically episodes 19 and 20 of Psycho-Pass. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. And let's do this. Okay. Okay. All right. Fine. Wow. Akane's such a badass, and I love the evolution that she goes on this episode. Like, the journey she goes throughout this episode. I freaking love Akane. She may be one of my... I really love Yona from Yona of the Dawn. Don't get me wrong. Yona is one of my favorite female protagonists, but Akane is rising up there. Girl, just... I love it so much. So let's talk about this episode, because sorry if that reaction was boring, because the whole time I was like, what, why are you doing a civil system? What we doing? And so I am here for this in a lot of ways, for a lot of reasons, and we need to talk about it. So yeah, let's do that. But before we get into that, I want to talk first about this opening scene where Kogami is practicing loading and unloading the gun, like trying to get it as fast as he can, because he's only got so many shots before he can hit Shogo. Which, can we also talk about Masaoka? And I'm gonna be taking a picture like of this little image here of Masaoka with baby Ginoza, because it's freaking adorable. Masaoka is one of those people that they exist in real life, but it's like they suddenly went from 20 to 47, and they stayed 47 for a very long time. I know a guy, one of my old speech coaches, when I was competing, he looked like he was in his 50s, and now he still looks like in his 50s. The thing was, he just turned 40 and like aged dramatically, and then has just stayed the same for the last 20 years. And it's like, well, that's interesting. So yeah, because Masaoka does look a little bit younger in this image with Ginoza, but not very much. Like, he definitely looks older now, but he still looked pretty older when Ginoza was a little kid. Definitely takes after the mom, although you can see a little bit of Masaoka's eyes in that image that he looks a little bit younger in. Ha. But can you imagine being Kogami, practicing firing your pistol, and there's a photo of your best friend and your other best friend / father figure right next to you? Like, just the emotions, everything. There's like little sake cups, this weird puffer fish, these like Daruma masks, all of this. It's crazy. And then we cut straight to Kogami practicing to be like, okay, if I face Shogo, I've got to be able to kill him quick, no hesitation. And I like his jacket with the red underneath, and then he still pops his motorcycle. That's what was underneath it the whole time. It was a dang motorcycle. Go figure. So let's talk about Ginoza. So here, let's just put everybody on the board. So Kogami, he's one of our characters we'll talk about today. He is on his mission, and his mission is to kill Makishima. That is what he's facing with. We'll also talk about Saiga and what they talk about there. Then we have poor Ginoza. Poor Ginoza, his hue is in critical state. He is basically very, very close to being a latent criminal at this point. It's not gotten any better. It's not looking good. The psychologist is like, let's call in and some emergency therapy. And he's like, not now, damn it. I've got to figure out what to do with this case. And what's so crazy is at this point, Ginoza's like nearly snapped. He's just like, nope, not gonna, at this point, I feel like Ginoza is so close to snapping because he's so emotional and he's basically lost Kogami. Kogami's gone off. He's like, he very much has to face the fact that he may have to kill his best friend on the force if they find him again. So he's trying to rectify that and deal with it. He's also dealing with the fact that he may end up becoming a latent criminal alongside his father. And then he also has to deal with the fact that he may be pushing Akane through the same thing. So there's a sign that he's just like, what else can he do? And he's afraid that he's going to end up becoming, you know, a latent criminal like his dad and his best friend who possibly could be killed. So there's that added stress. And then worrying about Akane having to deal with it all. So, like, Ginoza, I felt bad for him in this episode set because, and especially when he, like, lashes out at his dad, he's like, I just don't want you guys to leave me. And I don't want to end up in the same, place as you. So, and he says, watching Akane gives me hope that everything depends on how you look at things. Yeah, so we'll talk about Akane up here. She gets to go up here. That she's this hope for the future of the system. Well, this all took a very dramatic turn, which I'm not surprised. Now, I feel like now we know that the system is ran by robotic brains, robo-powered brains in the hive mind. This all seems to be getting very interesting and out of hand quickly. But man, I freaking love Saiga, the professor. He's amazing. He's like Sherlock, if Sherlock retired to a country home and grew his own vegetables. That's basically Saiga. I love him. I love how instantly he detects everything about Kogami without even... I'm sure Kogami even, like, positioned the gun in a certain place to see if Saiga would know. And he's just like, yeah, no. And he's like, oh, Professor Sensei! Kogami is constantly in awe with people, which it warms my heart. I love Kogami a lot. Worried about him for reasons. We'll see. Worried about him for many reasons, but we'll get there. But I do like the idea that Kogami is like, I've come to him to help me find Makishima and figure it all out. Meanwhile, Akane is pissed off. Like, I love the emotional range that Akane goes through in this journey is great. Let's talk about that. First, she's pissed. She's pissed that Kogami left. And I think that one thing she's also mad at is the fact that he didn't trust her. And it's not necessarily that he didn't keep his promise because he's like, oh, you'll be mad at me about that, but it's okay. But it's also the fact that she's like, you've put yourself in danger. I don't want you to die, but now you're really running the gambit that I feel like she's not only mad because she doesn't want, her thing is she does not want Kogami to be a killer. She doesn't want that, and she also wants Kogami to live. So him leaving now puts both of those things in jeopardy, and she's like, that's not how this should go, right? What's so funny is I'm watching another series right now called Monster, who has an antagonist that is an antagonist that would have a lot of fun in book club with Shogo. Let me just say that. They'd have a lot of fun in book club together, but its protagonist is kind of like Kogami in a sense that they feel like they kind of develop this obsession with tracking down the antagonist. And it's not exactly a man's pride, as Masaoka puts it, but it is an obsession. And there's a female character, too, that's kind of opposite the protagonist. But Akane, no offense to that female protagonist in Monster, Akane is way better. I love her so much more, because she's just like, well, screw this. Because she's actually the protagonist. You know, we follow Kogami as well, but Akane is the main character of the story. And we're following her throughout all this. And so she's like, well, we need to just capture Makishima alive, and then we'll worry about Kogami later. And I like that she calls out kind of the hypocrisy where Ginoza's like, well, we capture Makishima alive and we take care of Kogami right away. And she's like, oh, well, we take care of him. So we're going to kill him, but we're going to leave the criminal that's murdered all these people alive. Oh, I see how that is. That's funny how the system works. Like, you can just, like, the level of sarcasm on her voice when she was saying that was amazing. And she's like, we just need to... And I like that Masaoka tries to diffuse the situation. She's like, why can't we just get Makishima, worry about Kogami later? And Masaoka's like, let's just do the job we have at hand and let's all try to get along. Masaoka's trying to, like, diffuse the situation. And it's not going very well. So they have 5 days before the system gets updated. And that's a perfect amount of time for Makishima to make a move. I also love how in this moment... we kind of see her take charge. We see Akane take charge as an inspector. Where she's like, no, we have a job to do, which is to find Makishima, but we're probably going to we need to find him before Kogami does, because we're supposed to take him alive, and if Kogami finds him, that's not going to happen. So let's just figure out what we need to do here. And I love that she the way that she goes about all of this and explaining Makishima is very similar to Kogami, which is interesting. And she's like, that's why Shogo called Kogami to make a provocative call, to get him to make a move, to test him, to tease him, because that's just how he is. She's like, no, she's thinking like Shogo is, which is what Kogami's been doing as well. So it's just like, it's great seeing this all play out. I really liked this scene with Shion, though. Can we talk about that? I'm on the scene with Shion, where Shion kind of comforts Akane. I feel like Shion is trying to be like a matchmaker. Like, she's doing her best to be like, hey, Kogami, what's your lady friend gonna think about all this? You know, have you thought about that? Oh, no? Okay. Right? Because Shion ain't blind. She's been there when they've both been knocked out and hurt. She knows that they like each other. She is well aware they like each other. And she's trying to soften things over. I do genuinely like Shion, though, as a character. And I like that she offers for Akane. She's like, can I just be like a shoulder for you to cry on? Do you want to vent? And again, Akane says she's tested her psychopath. Her hue isn't as cloud as it should be under normal circumstances. I think she's asynchronic too. I was really afraid that the Brain Trust was going to figure that out about Akane and be like, hey, do you want to be our queen of the Borg, the hive mind? And I'd be like, oh no. Because I think that's what it is. I think that Akane is going to end up being this kind of middle person where she can relate to Shogo, she can relate to Kogami, but she is also different from both of them. And she's kind of this weird, like, there's the scales, and she's like the middle of the scales. Like, the anchor of it. The unmoving, like, resolved foundation of the scales. I feel like that's Akane. Because she seems to be able to connect with both of them on different levels. And then Kogami can connect to Shogo. And Shogo doesn't think he can connect with Akane at all. But I'm like, just wait till you see the new improved Akane that's pissed at you. And then you might change your mind. But I like that Shion offers an ear to let Akane vent. She's like, you need to talk. Just talk it out. And then I like that we don't hear her cry, but she's upset about Kogami. And she's like, I don't want him to become a killer. She's like, I don't want that to happen no matter what. And then Shion's like, well, you shouldn't, shoulder all this by yourself, And she's like, oh, I'm fine. She's like, I was surprised. She's like, how cold-hearted am I? And that's when Shion's like, well, your heart and psychopaths are two separate things. And she's like, well, then what is the heart and what is the psychopaths? If they're two different things, what do we do with this? She's like, can I be of sound mind and sound heart? How's this work? And I love that she just hugs her. But yeah, one of Akane's things that she has to work on is understanding the heart versus the mind. And how that relates to justice. Because yeah, her heart is telling her she doesn't want to hurt Kogami or have him killed. But then her mind's like, well, if he doesn't act within the system, what do we do with that? Meanwhile, I love that we have like the little shots of Saiga's farm and everything, and all the fruit and vegetables he's grown, and the real coffee beans with the strong coffee, and like the omelets and everything. Like Saiga, and poor Saiga, he's like, if they find out I helped you, then I'm dead. And all of this is for nothing, but it's worth it to try to, help you out because you're my favorite student. I do like that he asks, do you think you two are similar? And Kogami doesn't want to admit it, which is fascinating to me. But Saiga's like, no, you guys are very similar. You're very similar, but you are different, right? And so I talk about anarchists, right? Talk about anarchists here, which I think is interesting to bring up because Shogo isn't necessarily a total anarchist, and they kind of talk about it. They're like, revolutionists have suicidal tendencies, and they're not really interested in people, but they're good for nothings, but that's not really Shogo. And they talk about anarchy being denying authority and government. So denying authority is essentially what it is when they break it down, but it's different from confusion and disorder. It's not full chaos, right? It's denying, I like how they describe this, it's denying an inhuman system and building a human one. I like that, which essentially is like what Shogo wants to do, because especially now that we found out that the Sybil system is very much inhuman. It's been built from humans, but it is not inhuman. It's not very inhuman indeed. And so they're like, that's probably what he's trying to do. Makishima is close to an anarchist, but he's not, but since he likes destruction so much, he's not really with it. So then we have Max Weber. If I'm to borrow Max Weber's words, he says, ideal bureaucrats are those who intently perform their duty without anger or fondness, without hatred or zealousness. So it's the idea of an authority without emotion. Without emotion. Fun times. Without hatred or zealousness, and without love and personal predilection. Yeah. In that sense, the Sybil system is close to that ideal bureaucratic administration. Supposedly, I looked up Max Weber a little bit. He is from Germany. He died in 1920. So he was from 1864 to 1920. He was a sociologist, a historian, a jurist, and a political economist. He talks about a lot of different things. If you look him up online, there is like a lot of work that he's been doing. It kind of spans over a lot of different topics, but he does talk about like this idea of rationalism, which is the question of individual freedom in an increasingly rational society, talking mainly about psychological motivations, cultural values, and beliefs, primarily religion, and the structure of society as determined by economy, which is a fun thing to bring about the economy, since we talk about agriculture in this episode and its huge impact that it will have on Japan. So fun times. He also wrote a lot about capitalism, which is interesting, and talked about Calvinism, the idea of human effort towards rational efforts to achieve economic gain. He also, in the Protestant religion, talked about piety towards God as being expressed through one's secular vocation or a calling. So it's interesting, like mixing religion and economy and all this. He has a whole body of work. It is a lot. But he does, one of his biggest things is the Protestant ethic and spirit of capitalism, which is this idea of the development of the concept of a calling quickly gave to the modern entrepreneur a fabulously clear conscience, and also industrious workers giving to employees as wages of their aesthetic devotion to the calling and of cooperation in ruthless exploitation of them through capitalism and this prospect of eternal salvation. Fun times, 1905. What a great year. So I think that's interesting, though, to bring up Weber in that, because this idea of a calling and its idea of like duty towards like, I'm trying to say how I want to phrase this from here. I'm trying to paraphrase, but the idea of cooperation, and they say through like using capitalistic means, capitalism and business to achieve salvation. What I'm trying to say is it's very interesting that some of the concepts Weber talks about are not only akin to Shogo's idea of kind of his calling to start this revolution and deconstruct the system, but then you have later on in this episode Akane getting the calling from the Sybil system to be like, let's cooperate and, you know, we'll achieve salvation if you help us get Shogo, who's the missing piece to all of this that we're obsessed with, right? And what's interesting is we talk about obsession and Masaoka and saying it's a man's pride, but then you have the Sybil systems who's obsessed with getting Shogo to the point where they will say, yeah, we won't kill this one guy if you help us get it, even though it's not logical. It's fascinating, right? It's absolutely fascinating. But yeah, that's Weber. There's a whole thing about him. You can read about it. But I like Saiga, who wears his scarf inside the house because of reasons. But him talking to Kogami and being like, what do we know about Shogo and about this true form of the Sybil system? And this idea that Saiga points out is that, well, the best way to keep control of a culture is through knowledge. What do you know that they don't know? And how can you control them through that knowledge that is secret? And that's literally what the Sybil system is running on, right? And then he's like, he asks him, do you think that you are similar to Shogo? He's like, I'd like to meet Shogo and, record a session with him. I'm like, be careful what you wish for, Saiga. You don't want Shogo to find. There's a part of me that would like Shogo to meet Saiga, but then I'm afraid if he did, he'd kill him, so I kind of don't want that to happen. But I would like them to talk. I think that would be... He's like, it's just to help your investigation, but that would be great. For a hot second, I thought Shogo was going to show up with Saiga, but I don't know. And he says, if he were here right now, how do you think he'd join our conversation? And I like that we instantly shift, and the color palette changes, and it's these cool colors. It's like Shogo's actually in the room. I can definitely see the love triangle of Shogo, Kogami, and Akane, and it goes in all directions. And it's fascinating, right? But again, you have Shogo with the white hair, Kogami with the black hair, and Akane has the brown hair in the middle. She is literally the anchor in between them, right? In between their ideals. And Kogami's like, well, if he were here, he'd probably respond by quoting Foucault or Jeremy Bentham the moment you quote Max Weber. And rather than a system, it's a huge prison. And it's a panopticon. A facility that allows you to observe everyone at once, and Sybil is its worst possible form. You can control the maximum number of prisoners with the minimum number of people. And I love that he just sits there and smiles like, tee-hee. I'm just like, I'm in your brain. You're thinking about me. Haha. But that's literally, like, I kept waiting for Kogami to make an assumption about the true nature of the Sybil system and being like, will he figure out the brain room before Akane does? But he doesn't seem to get that far, but it's definitely interesting. And I love that he's like, he could even quote Gulliver's Travels. And I'm like, that's exactly what he did last episode. He's a cynical man with a distorted sense of humor. Which is funny because Kogami is a sarcastic man with a distorted sense of humor. He satirizes science and politics of it. I was waiting for Saiga to be like, oh, so he's a prick. But no. He's that kind of man. And then Saiga's like, so, let me ask you a personal question. You guys made out or something? Like, I was waiting for Lisa to ask you a personal question. He's like, do you think Shogo's hot? Is that something you want to personally ask? But no. Instead he asks, do you guys think you're alike? And I like that Kogami kind of tenses at that, like, because yeah, I think part of Kogami believes that he could be similar. He could be similar to Makishima, but I think there's also a part of him denying that because it's sort of like Ginoza not wanting to admit that he could be a latent criminal because of all the repercussions that come with that, right? Ginoza admitting he could be a latent criminal opens up this Pandora's box of, well, you're like your dad, you're like this, you're like your partner, the authority system has turned its back on you, blah, blah. And then with Kogami, it's like, if he admits that he and Shogo are alike, it's like, well, he detests Shogo so much, but then is that also showing how he detests so much about himself inside, right? How he's become obsessed with the case, the inequality, the inefficiency of him being able to not save Sasayama. Like, what does that, Kogami, it's like opening up a Pandora's box for him saying, well, if I am like Shogo, what does that say about me? And me killing him, what does that say? And that kind of ties to the OP where Kogami's always fighting himself because he's very much like Shogo. It's like this internal battle. And Kogami tries to dodge the question by saying, I think I understand parts of him. And Saiga's like, okay, but I don't know anything about his past. And I like that, again, the hue changes and it goes blue, funny enough, that there was a critical turning point in his life where he suddenly, the moment he realized that he was idiosyncratic and he can control his psychopaths at will. Now, this is just his guess. We don't know. The way that he depicts Makishima in this moment is very melancholy. Like, Makishima looks very soft and morose and everything. He doesn't look like that the rest of the series, though. So, this is Kogami's, like, interpretation, right? And they point out, if in this society, if the civil system doesn't acknowledge you, it's like you don't exist. Now, in that case, him and the main antagonist of Monster are very similar and different in interesting ways. So that's kind of cool to think about. But one thing that I was always thinking during the scene was, I think Akane is asynchronistic. I think she can control her psychopaths as well, because she notices it doesn't ever change. And the way that he described it, it felt like his psychopath was never... It's not that he can control it at will, it's that it just isn't there. And he's just like, eh. Now, I do think that even if he can't control it at will, even if it's something that just kind of on its own either increases or decreases, whatever, I still feel like that could be alienating, because if you can't control it and then it just isn't there, you're like, and you don't have control over your future. That part... Who knows? Maybe that is the case. I would love Kogami to ask him about it next episode, since he seems to be going to see him. So maybe we'll get that. But Kogami's like, it's all just a guess. I don't know. But then Saiga's like, you're not going to ask him about it. And he's like, no, I'm going to kill him. I'm not going to spend the time to ask him. And Saiga's like, well, okay. I feel like in a sense, Saiga's probably sad about that, because it could be, you know, as a psychologist, you'd want to know those answers. But then he's like, you know, it's your mission, not mine, right? So, but Kogami does not want to understand Shogo. He just wants to kill him. And that's it. Meanwhile, I like the idea that Akane later on, we'll put it up here, is understanding more and more about Shogo, even if she disapproves of it, right? Kogami only knows to go to the extreme because he doesn't really know what else to do, and Akane seems to like think, well, there might be something else we can do about this. But we'll talk about that here in a minute. So Ginoza goes to the chief to recommend that they continue to look for Shogo and Kogami, right? He's still pushing for them in the division to do it. And the thing about it is, the chief during that scene with Ginoza is acting so weird. She's not acting like herself. It's like the hive mind didn't give... It's like whoever is possessing the chief at that moment is not the right person. She's like, I don't know how to answer this kid's question. Carry on, keep doing what you're doing. Ever since we found out the chief has been multiple brains inhabiting her, it's like they all change all at once. They're trying to figure out stuff. And Ginoza's just like, well, what the hell do I do about this? Why is she acting weird? What's going on? And then that's when Masaoka's like, maybe we should give it to another division, because you, sir, Ginoza, are emotionally compromised. Maybe we should give it to another division and let them have it. Maybe we should. But Ginoza, very much, he wants to see it through. He wants to see it through. And it's like, if another division gets it, then he knows that they're going to kill Kogami, right? I feel like there's an ounce of control that Ginoza's entire world is getting less and less in his own control. Like, he knows his hue is rising. He knows that Akane's kind of showing him up this episode set and taking the lead. And he's like, well, shit, she's got her stuff together. What about me? He knows that he potentially could be a latent criminal. He knows his dad's in danger from this mission. He knows Kogami's probably going to die, and especially is going to die if they hand it over to somebody else, and he wants to take responsibility, but him taking responsibility means he might have to kill his best friend. So it's just like, all of this, it's like, yeah, it's all falling apart for Ginoza, and he's losing control of everything around him. So the last thing he wants to do is let another division have it. And Masaoka's kind of a realist. He's like, look, even if Ko surrenders, he's gonna get sent to a facility and executed. You know that, right? And I feel like in the last episode, when Kogami went down there to Masaoka didn't stop him, because he's like, look, you're a grown-ass man. You do what you want. You're making a bad choice, but who am I to stop you? You know, it's not my choice to make. You understand the consequences of your actions, and you're willing to take them because you're that obsessed with Shogo. And just, oh my God, the moment that Ginoza, like, gets his dad by the cuff, and he's like, oh, that moment where the two of them are like locking eyes together. I want to get a picture of it. But that moment where he's like, I bet you realized Kogami what he was thinking and just let him go, right? And I like that Masaoka doesn't say anything, but in his head he's like, yeah, I gave him some whiskey. We had like a toast. You weren't there. I feel so bad for him. I bet you didn't even try. I bet you saw him off, didn't you? In order to let him kill Makishima. And then he doesn't say anything. And I feel so bad for Ginoza. He's like, it's a criminal act. It's a breach of trust. And then he says, he sounds just like, the inspector being like, do you want me to check your crime coefficient right now? And Masaoka's like, you know what it's going to be. And then Ginoza's like, damn it. And him just punching the wall. And you can tell poor Masaoka's like, because that's his son. And it's his son, and it's about his best friend, and it's not a good situation. And that's when Masaoka and Ginoza's saying, everyone leaves me behind, and just heads over to the other side. Like Sasayama dies, Kogami leaves him behind and becomes an enforcer. He could be dying. His dad's become a criminal. It's like he's all alone. And at that moment, I wanted him to remember Akane and think about her, but it's so sad. He's like, why do you want to be heroes so badly? And he's like, this isn't about justice. It's an obsession. It's a man's pride. And Ginoza's like, well, I have my own pride. And I'm like, poor Ginoza. Meanwhile, the computer says he's done for. But under the current circumstances, there's no one immediately available to use as our pawn. So yeah, they know that Ginoza's out of the game. They know he's not good, and Kogami is a threat. And so they're like, well, what can we do? And so they're like, who can we use? And so the computer's in the chief's brain and is like, what? They're like, is this the final collective decision by everybody? And they're like, yeah, this is going to be freaking weird. Getting this girl to go down. And they're like, I can't fully understand with my current capacity. So I'd like to go back there and check on the consensus. So yeah, of course, what's great is that the hive mind at this point, because their brains, they're trying to logically think of a solution. And they've determined by looking and surveying Akane that she is the one most dedicated to the system. Everybody's been saying it. And she's given verbal demonstrations, like in the last episode where she said, this is how the system works. Let's play by the book, and not letting her emotions get overrun by the situation. They're like, oh, we can tell her because she's not going to try to override the system. And I'm like, that seems like it was a very bad mistake. So we're going to talk about that here in a second. But first, they go through this message board. I love this very weird, message board of threads, and how they're like, look, I made this conversation. I did this little, lulz trolling thread. Which one seems the most weird? And that's when Kogami starts to go through this one and talking about the food shortage, which is exactly what it is for the hyper oats. The hyper oats. So I love the way that this world building is set up to explain modern agriculture. And the sad thing is, it's not that far off. So it's kind of weird how a lot of this is already in play. I know we have genetically modified organisms. We have GMOs with crops and all that fun stuff. But I also like the fact that they point out about how so much of agriculture is being automated. They're doing everything through drones and through robots now, to the point in this timeline, in this world, where farming isn't even a profession. It's all automated, which is happening a lot in modern agriculture. So much is machine driven and used by automation that it's not, human hands don't touch it as much, right? Unless you're growing your own food like Saiga or doing something like that. So that part's really interesting, but the idea of the hyper oats, which explains why everybody's food is kind of it's just this density food, this high density food that's just made from these specialized crops. And the idea that they use a good virus to clear out all of the pests, but if somebody modified the virus, it would kill the crops. That's insane. And I just love this low tech research montage where they get books out and they like print stuff out of a printer, and it's all very like 90s low tech. Love it. It's great. They're like research montage. It's fantastic. And so this part here about Japan is really interesting. So where the crops and stuff are, there's no people. It's just robots. A fitting place for a climactic conclusion. Also, if we have the climactic conclusion in a wheat field, I mean, why not? Why not? It feels very Gladiator. So they established this whole thing where I've been wondering about this the entire series, but nobody's said anything in the series, so I've just been waiting for them to like let it flesh out in the open. But essentially, you have Japan has isolated itself. So not everyone in the world is using the Sybil system. It is like a Japan exclusive, right? But they have isolated themselves from the rest of the world, so they don't import food. They've cut off their borders. Japan is just a self-sustained country that doesn't need to trade or do anything with other countries as well. And that makes sense of why the Sybil system has been so successful, because what do you need the other countries for? We don't have crime. We don't need anything else. Bye. So the idea, if they have to import food, they have to open up the borders. And if they open up the borders, there's a chance people could immigrate in. And if people can immigrate in, well, that will throw the entire Sybil system out of whack. And it will just cause this domino effect that could possibly, like, just destroy everything. So why not? You know, that part is so interesting to me, that that's what they're suggesting might happen, and the population's crime coefficients will rise again. So it's just, I love this episode, how they came to the conclusion and how they like deducted and put all of this together. It was great. I loved it so much. So yeah. And then Saiga says, the next time I get a surprise check, it'll be for me. And Kogami's like, I'm sorry to trouble you. And he's like, nah. He's like, don't worry about it. I got punished for burying myself at home and not participating in society. That's all. I want Saiga to be okay. I don't want him to die. No, thank you. And then Kogami takes off. And Kogami does this stupid grin where he's like, oh, it's okay. I know I'm about to die if I go and do this, but it'll be all right. Yeah, I want to get a picture of this stupid, idiotic grin that he does. That's like this fake grin of, I'll be okay. Stop it. I don't want Kogami to die. Nope. Meanwhile, Akane stays late at her office and then is approached by this thing that says, I'm going to tell you the truth about everything. And she's like, what the fudge? So then we have her having this conversation with Kunizuka. I feel like some parts of this are extended edition exclusive. Maybe they added it in, perhaps. But because it feels a little out of place, but it's fine. So she says she's trying to learn more about judicial systems of the past, about how Makishima could be judged after we capture him. And she says, yeah, I was hoping to find some specific ideas. And Kunizuka, girl hasn't talked this much since her episode, right? Girl hasn't talked this much since episode 8. But she talks about how a lot of the data online has made it very easy to micromanage it and to manipulate it and to make it to where it's very easy now for government agencies to control it, which again, I was like, oh no, because that's been kind of like the idea of research going away. Like that's a huge thing. The idea that we don't research like we used to. We don't read print books because print books are much harder to control once they're out in the open. A document online, you can take it down like that. It's kind of like the big discussion of streaming versus physical copies now, because streaming services can get rid of things so quickly that you gotta, like, literally, unless you find it somehow, it can be easy to get rid of media. So the same things with information. You can alter history online so much easier than through a print book because it's such a bigger process. And we don't want people to research, because if they research, they might find something out that goes against the system. So it's this big, like, domino effect. But the way Kunizuka describes it, I'm like, no, that is literally happening today in our societies. And it's absolutely terrifying. And she says when Masaoka was a child, they still had history as almost a required subject. And now it's like, well, are we even, there's like, you know, in my own country, political groups that try to get certain histories from not being taught to kids. And that's terrifying, right? Because knowledge is power. And if you don't have knowledge about something, then others can control you with it. So it's terrifying. I also feel that Kunizuka is more vocal in this episode because Kogari isn't there. Because now that Kagari's not there to be the main talker, she kind of has to make up for it, which is really sad. And she's like, now the Sybil system has made this ultimate perfect society. So because it's a perfect society, you don't have to learn the mistakes of the past, right? And as she's saying it, there's this like crappy bowl of udon, like instant udon, and a glass of water next to her, right? It's very processed and packaged. It's the package of udon is representative of the society. It's just an illusion. It's supposed to be this perfect thing, but it's not. I like this idea of if you are learning history, it's to learn about mistakes of the past to create a better future. That's the whole point of it, right? You want to learn from the past so that you don't repeat it. But with the Sybil system, they don't want you to know history because then that might suggest that the society they're in now isn't perfect, and they don't want you to think that. So she suggests they've been altering and tampering with information online so that the easiest stuff to find is the stuff that makes the Sybil system look good. And the harder stuff that would point out the flaws are either non-existent anymore or they're very difficult to find. And it's like, well, that's terrifying. So awesome. But yeah. And she's like, if people start to question all of that, their psychopaths could get clouded. And she's like, if you research history in depth, you'll find that a lot of stuff has been erased. And I like during this entire scene, it's just Kunizuka and it's just Akane. Like, I don't know if it's a dream sequence or a flashback. I'm assuming it's a flashback. But it's all just the two of them. Kind of like it was that night with her and Kagari by themselves. And then she flashes over to in the past thinking about her friends and them talking about the system and how thanks to the system, they don't have to question anything anymore. And it's like, it just, everything's done for them. So it's fine. The system's perfect. As she's being like shown the trap door. Meanwhile, the core, as she goes to the core of the world, the heart and the mind. Which is funny because she's been asking about the heart versus the mind. And she gets to meet the Sybil system's heart and mind. And find out just exactly how messed up it is. So meanwhile, we see Shogo, why this young, enthusiastic young gentleman who's gone to meet this agricultural enthusiast and man that's in charge of everything. Imagine that. And I like that he has like his cognac, his like brandy on ice, and then Shogo just has like a cup of tea. Always just wants a cup of tea. And he's so happy. Shogo's just got this little fake smile plastered on his face the entire episode. Kind of like Kogami when he tells Saiga, like, hey, when Saiga leaves, he puts on the fake smile. It's like Shogo with the fake smile. The only difference is Kogami didn't kill Saiga, and Shogo kills this man brutally and takes his fingers and eyeball. He's like, no young men ever visit me. I don't know why we get like the weird crotch and butt shots of him in this moment, like, but they animate it that way. I don't know why. And then he pulls out his Sweeney Todd knife and he's like, well, I'm going to kill you now. And then, I do think it's very effective when Kogami walks in, sees him on the ground, and just sees a little bit before he's like, well, son of a bitch. Meanwhile, and he does it in like total darkness. Meanwhile, we see Akane as she finds out where Kagari died at, that he died in the place with the brains. And she's so mad. Oh, her being so mad, being like, did you kill them? And they're like, well, that was the logical conclusion that we came to. And she's like, we cannot, anybody that can't, analyze the Sybil system, it's inevitable. No matter how detailed or robust a system you build, a certain number of irregularities are certain to appear. So we come to find out that all of the brains in the Sybil system are asynchronic, or asymptomatic, which is terrifying. And that's why they want Shogo, because we've come to the conclusion that it's like 1 in every 2 million. So they're very rare. So anytime they find one, they're like, oh, we want that brain, right? I thought they were going to want Akane to be like the Borg queen, the one to like rule them all. But instead, they just want to use her as a pawn. And they've deemed that she's not going to become a latent criminal, and that she's also most likely to help them because she believes in the system. And that's what they've determined. She's like, but I'm like, you guys are kind of screwing yourselves over because you've just revealed what the system is. Now she knows that the system is a lie and not perfect, and therefore could and maybe should be challenged. You know, we're taking what she finds out from the Sybil system itself alongside what she finds out from Kunizuka and from her conversation with Kagari and from her impressions of Shogo. Like, Akane is not just a simple computer. Akane is this multi-layered person that is taking all of her experiences and developing this formed opinion about the system. And I'm like, you probably have hurt more than helped. Because I think if she didn't know that this hive mind brain thing was in charge, then she might have still gone along with it. But I feel like now, I think narratively, I was wondering, I'm like, why tell her all this now? But they want somebody that can be guaranteed to bring Shogo in. And they've realized that, you know, they can't rely upon Ginoza because he may turn coat because he's a latent criminal. And they can't rely upon him. So he may end up changing his mind and sparing Kogami. Which is funny because she ends up making the deal with him anyway. But their logical thought process is, well, we can't rely on Ginoza. We need somebody from District 1. Can't rely on Kunizuka or Masaoka, so it's got to be her. And we don't think she's going to betray the system because of how she acts now. But narratively, I think it makes sense for her to know at this point because this is going to give her time to process. And she's smart, like Shogo and Kogami, to maybe figure out what to do about the system or how to tell the others about it, right? And she's like, every one of us here, the more prejudiced and peculiar the orientation of the individuals, the more perfect we are to handle it. So we need Makishima. And she has like a freak out moment, right? Which I don't blame Akane. She has a freak out and then she's mad at them for killing Kagari. And she's like, I'm not a fool. But then when they ask her, do you think the Sybil system is wrong? She has to think about it. And that's why they determine that they want to develop this collaborative relationship. And she's like, collaborative? Like what? And she's like, we're in a crisis situation. And they kind of explain that Ginoza's drained and he might be useless. And they're like, we need somebody that can help us track him down. That's why we showed you the truth. It's the best way to give you motivation. I was like, well, you may have given her motivation, but I don't know if it's going to be motivation to help your cause. I think that's going to do the exact opposite. And I love that she's like, you too disagree with Shinya Kogami personally punishing Shogo Makishima, which she does. Yes. And she's just like, oh my God, you and we share the same value of trying to avoid a pointless death caused by unchecked emotions. Oh, I freaking love the idea that Akane is getting compared to the Sybil system. Meanwhile, you have Kogami, who is being compared to Shogo. So we have our four, our three villainous groups. We have Shogo, we have the Sybil system, and then we have the District 1, which now is splintered into two. So we have these four individuals who are all similar and different, and they're being compared with one another, and it's hilarious. And the two antagonistic groups, Shogo and the Sybil system, are comparing themselves to our protagonist groups of Kogami and Akane. Brilliant. I love it so much. It's great. And she's like, well, if you guys broke the law in the past, shouldn't you atone for your crimes? And like, oh, we've already atoned by doing so much good. So I feel like Akane is also trying to figure out, okay, how can I manipulate the system? How do they justify right and wrong? How are they justifying this? And I think the moment they said that about benefiting, she's like, okay, I can trick the system if that's what they're using as their excuse. And she's just like, okay. She's like, how convenient. And I feel like at that point, Akane's like, okay, we'll just make this a matter of convenience then and just roll with it. She becomes such a badass in this episode. I'm like, yes, girl, freaking A, Cotton. And then we have her and her friends deciding like where they end up with as far as their jobs go. And they're like, well, because of the Sybil system, your happiness is not left to chance. But it kind of is, because what if by chance you just have terrible scores? Right? So what does she see here? She goes down there and we see like her rank is C. And her psychopath is 37.8. Because she only got 371 out of the 730 point test. So interesting. And meanwhile, Akane got 700 out of the 730. Okay. And then I like that we talk about free will and that Akane had the right to go anywhere that she wanted to, and she chose this department. And then we cut to Kogami, which I missed him. Him being in this episode showed me how much I miss him. His character, his voice. I was like, oh, it feels so good to see Kogami. And he's like, what makes you think that someone like me would know the answer to this? You could have become anything. You could have chosen any kind of life, and you agonized over it. You're like the old people before Sybil was created. Which is so funny because you have Kogami who could have chosen to team up with Cho, but he didn't, right? He had that freedom of will at the end. And she's like, it's incredible, isn't it? Everyone used to feel their way around and choose their own life. To think in a world in which such things were just natural existed. And he's like, well, nowadays the Sybil system reads your talent and chooses for you. And you're talking about a real life and the reason you're born. I didn't think people stressed over things like that. Meanwhile, she's like, it's a heavy, tough anxiety. But I feel now, that it might actually be a happy thing to be able to worry about these sort of things. And then we see Kogami smile like he's like, that's right. Meanwhile, then we cut to Shogo. So it's like she is basically rationalizing in her mind. She wants things to essentially be what Shogo's goal is, which is without the Sybil system where people choose their own fates and their own happiness. But she sees Shogo up here and he's like, there's value in people only when they act based on their will. And seeing the sunlight pour down on him, like, why does he have to be in the best light? He's got, like, Reagan syndrome, which is hilarious because they have the same voice actor. It's like he has to look good no matter how they animate him. So I've asked many people about their suppressed free will and observed their actions all this time. And she's like, yeah, I can understand how you feel a little. I'm like, because Kogami's kind of in denial about it. Kogami doesn't want to admit that they're very similar, right? But Akane's like, no, I get it. Your methods are messed up, but I get it. I get it now why you're doing this, sort of. And he's like, how do you define a crime to start with? The dominator you're holding. And then we go back to that, does the Sybil system that governs that gun decide it? And that's when Akane is like, that was the mistake in the first place. And he's like, yes! So I feel like, Sybil system, you think that Akane giving her this information and entrusting her with it is going to make her believe more in the system. But no, instead now she's questioning everything and her whole worldview is getting redeveloped. And I love this whole scene. And she's like, the important thing wasn't the conclusion of good or evil. I feel it was to think about yourself, agonize, and accept it. I like that she kind of challenges Shogo in her mind, being like, this isn't just about like what's good and what's evil. It's about accepting reality, but, coming to terms with yourself. And he's like, I want to see the splendor of people's souls. I want to check and see if it actually is precious. And when humans base their lives around the Sybil system, then they're not precious anymore. He's like, do they hold any value? And she's like, there's no way that they don't hold value. And why do you get to decide it? How can you judge a family or friend? You never judge the value. What does she say there before she says, she yells at him, she's like, you can't be the determiner of that value of their souls, right? You judge someone's family or their friends. You judge the value of a happiness that you've never felt. Oh, I love it. Like her and Kogami coming to terms about Shogo's alienation, about his lack of happiness and his boredom. Yes. So she's basically come to the conclusion, Akane has come to the conclusion that Shogo has never been happy. And so because of that, he's trying to measure and find out what happiness is. But you can't find true happiness if everybody's being controlled by the Sybil system. So it's a great scene. I love all these rationale. I wish Kogami and Akane could come together and talk about this, but of course not. No. And then we have, her friend saying, was I still happy? Do you think I was truly happy? And as long as people are alive, anybody can find that answer. So we get back to Akane being like, okay, let's figure out what we're going to do here. And she's like, look, I love she picks up the gun. She's like, are you still listening, stupid Sybil system in this gun? She's like, I'm going to make a deal. I want you to guarantee Kogami's life if I give you Shogo. And they're like, well, those two things aren't logically equivalent. And she's like, I don't care about your logic. She's like, screw you. You want my help? This doesn't make sense. I love it. She's like, if Kogami won't be saved, then I'll let Makishima die and I won't do anything. And she even says, she's like, if push comes to shove, I'll kill him with my own hands. So Akane's made a deal with the Sybil system that if she gives them Shogo alive, they have to spare Kogami. Now, of course, Kogami will not agree to any of this. Kogami will be like, what the fudge are you doing? No. Why are you making these deals? That's not logical. That's not with the justice system. And she's going to be like, screw it. And she says that if not, she may kill Shogo. I think that's what's going to happen. I think that she's going to kill Shogo. I think that she is going to save Kogami's life. Or if Kogami ends up getting killed, I think she's going to kill Shogo so that the Sybil system can't have him. Is what I think is going to happen. Especially if Kogami dies. If Kogami ends up dying, she's going to kill Shogo so that the Sybil system can't have him as like one actor of retribution. I think that's what she's going to do. And then she's like, are you going to kill me as well since I don't obey you? And that look on her face when she says, go ahead and shoot me. Go ahead. I don't think they're going to be able to unless the chief overrides it themselves. She's like, kill me just like you killed Kagari and find another pawn if you think you can use them. Oh my God, I love it. They're like, once Shogo is captured alive, we'll make an exception for Kogami. Now, that's a very specific wording, and that's not very fair, because it's not that as long as you catch Shogo alive, we'll keep Kogami safe. It's once he's captured alive, we'll keep him safe. Well, hell, he could be killed before they capture him alive. So it's like, I'm like, that, the monkey's paw of that, I don't like the way that that's worded. I'm like, no, I don't like that. That seems like it's gonna be a problem. And then I do love that the cars can camouflage themselves and re-camouflage themselves, and she becomes a little cop car. And I love that we have everyone going in one direction in the city, like one way that way, and she takes off and diverges her own route. I like that Akane kind of diverges and makes her own path at this point, and that's what she ends up doing. It is brilliant. I'm like, yes, please. And then she shows up. I like she just walks in, huge energy, like just boss bitch, like let's go. And because it's like, let's be real. Kogami was not the killer of this man. And I think Ginoza and all of them know it. They're just following protocol. But she just shows up and is like, what happened? And she doesn't even like bat an eye at the fact this man is missing all of his fingers and his eyeballs. She doesn't even think about it. She's like, nope, done. I'm on a mission. I ain't got time to be worried about this. No, I've seen worse. And Masaoka like tries to catch her up to speed, but even he looks like something's like out of the ordinary. So he rushed in to find this. And they have the little cleaning bots going out and seeing like if there's anything on the floor, and they figure out he's from the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry. He retired quite a long time ago, and he's an ordinary pensioner. And I love that she's just like looking at it, like trying to think what to do. And they're like, okay, I don't have time for Kogami to be suspected of this. This is clearly somebody that has been attacked by Makishima. And she's like, he's been slashed. We know his calling card by now. She's like, I bet it was Shogo. And they're like, oh, okay. And like, this has something to do with Makishima's next plan. Kogami figured it out, but he was too late. And they're all just kind of like, oh, well, we've come to this conclusion already. Okay. Is Kogami ahead of us? Why was this old man killed by Makishima? And I like that this place was all messed up to look like it was more complicated than it really was, right? It's hard to investigate a site that's been messed up by this. And so I like the idea that Akane's like, well, he messed this place up because if some other division comes in and they have to investigate, it'll throw him off and buy him more time. But Akane's like, if he's trying to find Shogo, Kogami is not overconfident. He thinks there could be a chance something could get messed up. So he would want to leave us a clue so that we could go find him as well to finish the job. And Masaoka's like, sure, yeah. And she's like, well, let's think about things in that order then. And she starts just randomly looking around for a clue. And Ginoza like walks up and he's like, well, I like that Ginoza has nothing to say. He's just behind her like, hello, Akane, you just showed up ready to go. And she's like, it has to be hidden on the body somewhere. And so while he remained missing, we would have continued pursuing a misdirected investigation, and Kogami would have gained a larger lead. It would have been the best way to buy some time. And the way she's talking sounds just like Kogami, and he notices that she's sounding just like him. Oh my god, something's happened since she has last seen Ginoza, and now she's talking like Kogami and thinking like him, who's thinking like Shogo. So, girl is a sponge. And then she just, like, in case if he fails, he would have to leave a clue to stop Makishima. And then I love that she's like, looks at the body and is like, okay, let's do a scan of his face and his face and mouth. The question is, when will we notice that clue? He's testing us to see if we have the same or an even bigger tenacity than his to pursue Makishima. Which is so funny because it's like Shogo has been testing Kogami and now Kogami is testing them. Oh, I freaking love this episode set so much. If you don't have that determination, then you'll be stranded here and get a late start. And everybody, the three of them are just like, are we even needed? And yeah, they managed to do it. And then she's like, something's in the airway. And she's like, give me some gloves. And they're like, well, now, wait a minute, Missy. Are you sure that we could let forensics do it? And she's like, no time. She's like, that will allow him some time. And we're going to rescue him. We have to do it right here and now. And I love that they're just like, okay. And then there's the device. This is a message for the detectives who will be here a while. Ginoza's like, son of a bitch. The victim is whoever he is, and there's this Ukonomitama virus that Shogo's going to try to go and reverse. That could be a contaminant, and he explains it. I freaking love when we see Shogo walking through the field with his little duffel bag. His duffel bag, he looks like a character from Monster, I swear. The connections to Monster this episode are crazy. And he also has a white, pristine rubber coat, and you have Kogami coming up in a black coat. It's like, could you all be more contrasting? Could it be more perfect, right? But I'm just like, oh my god. And then he just like has this little, like, as he's talking about him gouging the eyeballs out and cutting off the fingers at the joints, we see Makishima, and he just looks so happy and pleased with himself like a freaking cat. It is hysterical, right? I'm just like, oh my god, how? I'm gonna go back and get some pictures of Akane later, but they're needed to break through some form of security. And then, yeah, we see him go up, And he just goes right in, slides the card and goes into the facility. This giant ass wheat field that's controlling like most of Japan's food. And then Akane's like, let's go. And then, yeah, he just goes through like he's just ready to interrupt the virus. Meanwhile, I'm guessing Kogami could not drive the motorcycle any further. One, because security might have things in place to stop him, which is why Shogo walked as well. But two, he would need a getaway vehicle, at the end of it all. Oh my god. And then, yeah, Kogami walking up as well. Oh my god. I feel like there wasn't as much to talk this week about. We didn't have the book club like we normally do. Shogo's book club was not present, so there wasn't enough of that to talk about. And in addition to not having Shogo's book club, there was Mark Webber was mentioned and a few others, but it was mostly the action of let's catch up to figure out what Makishima's next move is and try to find him before he makes that move. And also it was Akane getting her freaking agency figured out and figuring out like, fine, if I gotta manipulate this system, I've kind of got Sybil system by the balls at this point, so why not? I don't know if it's gonna backfire on her. I don't know. That OP leads us to believe that it's gonna be Makishima and Kogami and her at the end with guns pointed at each other. The big question is, if she decided to kill Shogo, how would she do it? Because she just has the Dominator, and that's not going to work against Shogo. So what would she end up using? That's the big question, and we don't necessarily know the answer to that. So I don't know. I'm very curious to see what would end up going down with that. I don't know, honestly. I'm really excited. Next week is the final episode. It's all led up to this showdown. Now, do I think that they're going to end up in the wheat field for the final confrontation? No, I don't. I think that, they could. It's a big facility. They showed that building being gigantic. So it could very well all come down to them, chasing down Shogo in this giant facility before he spreads the virus that could destroy the food supply. Could be. And then the question is, like, if they have some big dramatic ass, like, final duel in a wheat field and Shogo and Kogami end up killing each other, or Shogo ends up getting killed by Akane and Kogami ends up getting killed by somebody else, somebody's gonna die next episode. I have a feeling somebody's gonna die. Whether it's Shogo, whether it's Kogami. I don't think it's Akane. I don't think Akane's gonna die. But it could be both a Shogo and Akane. Shogo and Kogami. It could be Masaoka. I don't know. I think it's also very hilarious that you have the fate of the Japanese society hinging on this like agriculture facility that is being automated and everything. It's I love the symbolism. I love everything it's representing. This episode set was great. Seeing Akane be badass was amazing. But girl, the Sybil system is like pushed her into the point of no return. It's like, what is she going to end up doing? I don't know, y'all. But I'm interested to find out. So yeah. Oh my god. I'm so excited to hear your thoughts down below. Next week's going to be interesting for sure. So in the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, I'll be back very soon with more Psychopaths.